What's up, everybody? Max Dean is football, and I am Max Dean, aka the most tired dad on YouTube. Alright, I've got an interesting one for you today. I'm going to try and move through it pretty quickly because I just have a limited amount of time to get it done. And what I've got for you today is my breakdown of how three teams crushed the weekend the hardest. That is the draft weekend, of course. But instead of just going through pick by pick and, dwelling on the draft classes exclusively, what's fascinating to me is the process, the vision, the execution, the plan, and how they follow through on it. And I'm even going to look back as far as a couple of years in some cases to see how they accumulated picks and situated themselves in the ideal position, and then the players that they took to sort of realize their vision for what their team should be, and how they self-scout and sort of the life cycle that the part of the life cycle that their team and their roster is in. So this is an interesting one, and like I said, I'm going to try and do it quickly. I'm not sure why the podcast feed's not working, so I have to figure that out. But obviously, find me right here on YouTube. Like, subscribe if you like the content, and you can find me on Twitter at @TheMaxDean. All right, let's jump in. We're talking about the New York Jets. We're talking about the Baltimore Ravens, and we're talking about the Philadelphia Eagles. All right, so these teams, to me, they had the best weekend, and it's not just about the players that they selected. It's about how they managed their assets and put together a weekend in which they were able to add more assets, whether they be in picks or in players. And I really liked how all three did it. And I wanted to look back and kind of see how they got to this point each. So, first thing is, what I'm going to do is take a look at the trades leading up to the 2022 draft. So I tried to include every trade that I could, even the small ones, because they are important, that has anything to do with the 2022 draft pick. And especially, I'm a Jets fan, and I probably didn't even have every single one that the Jets had, but going through them for the Ravens and the Eagles was like, I felt like Charlie from It's Always Sunny, like stringing red yarn together on the cork board. So hopefully I got most of them. I'm sure I missed a couple here and there, but I don't think that they'll change the overall outcome of what you're about to see and what I'm about to talk about. So I love the way that these three franchises are being run right now, and I know that's unusual for the Jets, and even though the Eagles have taken some flack, I think, anytime you hit the end of a roster's life cycle and you have to turn things over, it's not always pretty. So, but right now, I think all three of these teams are doing some interesting stuff. So, taking a look at the Jets, over the last few years, they have traded quite a few assets to accumulate high draft picks. And, some of those big ones would be Sam Darnold and Jamal Adams. So we'll hear about all those. But what are these other ones that are interesting? And what are these other ones that affect the assets that they go into a draft weekend with? Let's disappear there for a minute so you can see better. All right. Back in the summer of 2020, when Jamal Adams was making a big deal out of getting out of New York, they ended up trading him for 2 first-round picks, a safety, Bradley McDougald, and basically a trade up from a 4th-round pick to a 3rd-round pick. And one of the important things with this is that the way that I'm going to approach this is I am going to consider current and future draft picks as equal, right? So a 4th-round pick this year and a 4th-round pick next year, to me, they're equal. They have the same value, and I think there are a lot of teams who view them as less valuable, which I believe is an inefficiency that you can take advantage of. And I think that these teams do that pretty well. So, instead of saying they traded for 2 firsts, a 3rd, and a safety and gave up Jamal Adams and a 4th, really what I look at that as is they traded Jamal Adams in order to get 2 first-round picks, a trade up from the 4th to the 3rd, and safety Bradley McDougald. That's how I view it, and I think it 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 it's actually a more realistic way to look at this stuff. And so at the end, I'm going to look at all of those picks that were traded up 1 round, 2 rounds, even at the back, and you'll see how many overall pick selections you can improve in some small ways. So the Jets improve with 2 overall picks, a full round trade up, and swap safeties essentially. In the fall of 2020, things weren't going well. They traded away linebacker Avery Williamson and a 7th round pick for a 2022 5th round pick. Okay, so they traded away an aging veteran linebacker on a team that was going nowhere to a contender in the Pittsburgh Steelers, and they get to move up 2 full rounds for that. Okay, that's significant value when you really think about it. These are the trades that everyone forgets about, but these mean something, especially to a rebuilding team. They also, around that trade deadline, traded away Jordan Willis, an edge rusher, to the San Francisco 49ers to move from the 7th up to the 6th in 2022. Okay, so they're trading away 2021 7th to move up 1 round. They're trading a 2022 7th to move up 2 rounds. We're seeing a trend here. In that same trade deadline, they traded away nose tackle Steve McClendon to the Buccaneers. Okay, let me fix that. That's not supposed to be a pit. You have to forgive me periodically. I have these as I am putting together all of these little charts and graphics. They give up a 2023 7th to get a 2022 6th round pick. Okay, another full round move up. That season went horribly, and going into the 2021 draft, they trade Sam Darnold for a 2nd round pick, a 4th round pick, and a 6th round pick. Okay, now it was before the 2021 draft. They only got a 6th in 2021, but if you value the picks the same in the future, you now have a 4th round pick and a 2nd round pick. In the summer of 2021, the Vikings get an injury to the tight end position. They trade Chris Herndon to the Vikings and send a 6th round pick to trade up all the way 2 rounds to a 4th round pick. And I think one of the things that you'll see here is that teams, as long as they're getting a pick back, they feel more comfortable giving you a quality pick. Like a 5th or 4th round pick in most drafts, that's a quality pick. You know? And so if you can give up a player that you have really no interest in keeping anyway, like Avery Williamson, Jordan Willis, Steve McClendon, Sam Darnold, Chris Herndon, or I guess Sam Darnold's a little different, but Chris Herndon, guys you never had any intent to keep, and you managed to move up in those rounds. Teams are like, hey, well, at least we're not losing a pick. Well, I mean, you're not losing a pick, but you're losing value, and there's a reason the team is not interested in keeping that player. Summer 2021, Carl Lawson, edge rusher, gets injured, so they send a 6th round pick to not the Minnesota Vikings once again. Let's change that to Houston for a 6th round pick that they accumulated in one of these trades, and then they also traded a 6th round pick for Joe Flacco from the Eagles, and both of those players played meaningful snaps. It was a bit of a lost season, but Joe Flacco's presence did help, and Shaq Lawson was a starting defensive end for them for the majority of the season. The Baltimore Ravens, and this one was fun. Okay, so Baltimore Ravens, they get a special compensatory pick for the hiring of David Culley to the Houston Texans, 3rd round. They get a compensatory pick for the New England Patriots signing Matthew Judon, edge rusher, and they get a 4th round pick for that. They get a 4th round pick for the Las Vegas Raiders signing Yannick Ngakoue. So they've accumulated 3 picks just for letting players go that they didn't intend to keep anyway. So, yeah, I mean, everybody knows that that's part of their system, but let's look at some of these other ones too. Okay? They trade Orlando Brown Jr. To the Kansas City Chiefs, and they send a 2nd round pick and get a 1st round pick in return. So that's a trade up, but they also get a 3rd round pick, a 4th round pick, and a 5th round pick in that trade. Then in the 2021 draft, they traded a a fourth and a sixth to get a fifth and a fourth. So they trade back a little bit. They trade back in the 2021 draft and ship out a sixth round pick, but also get a 2-round move up to the 4th round pick in the future. So you move down 1 round to move up 2 rounds. In the summer of 2021, the Giants needed help on the offensive line, so they sent backup guard Ben Bredesen and a 5th round pick and a 7th round pick to move all the way up into the 4th round. Summer of 2020, they also sent backup guard Greg Manch and a 7th round pick to move up to a 6th round pick. Okay. Summer 2021, they send Shaun Wade, a freshly drafted corner, to the New England Patriots for a 7th round pick and a 2023 5th round pick. In the summer of 2021, they sent a 7th round pick to Miami in return for Josh Oliver. Is that right? I don't know. I can't remember if that's the right one. Ravens trade for... Why do I feel like it was a different team? Jaguars. Yeah, okay. So you got all of these picks in return for players they never intended to keep. For instead of trading Orlando Brown Jr. for a 1st round pick, they send a 2nd round pick as well. So they get a 3rd, 4th, and a 5th on top of that in additional picks. Little trades here and there that help you move up without losing picks, and anytime you can get additional picks, you come out on top. So out of all these trades, the only time they actually gave up a pick and didn't get a pick in return was a 7th round pick for Josh Oliver, and they sent a 7th to move up from the 5th to the 4th in that Ben Bredesen trade. So overall, they're moving up, generally speaking, and gaining picks, not losing picks. Philadelphia Eagles. They trade Carson Wentz for a 3rd round pick in 2021 and a conditional 2nd that turned into a 1st in 2022. So obviously a plus of 2 picks. In the spring of 2021, leading up to the draft, they were part of a 3-way trade with the 49ers and the Dolphins, but the Dolphins sent a 1st round pick in 2021, a 1st round pick in 2022, and a 4th round pick in 2021 in exchange for a 6th round pick, the 6th overall pick, and a 5th round pick. So essentially what that trade was, and this is still wild to me that the Dolphins actually did this, the Ravens moved down 6 places in the 1st round, and their compensation was a trade up from 5th to 4th and a 1st round pick. I don't care what the trade charts say, that's highway robbery. Draft day 2021, they make a trade with the Indianapolis Colts. They trade a 7th round pick to move up from the 6th to the 5th in the future, is really what that is. In fall of 2021, they trade Zach Ertz to that should be the Cardinals. And they get back Tegawan corner and a 5th round pick in the coming draft. In the summer of 2021, they traded backup guard Matt Pryor and a 7th round pick to move up into the 6th round pick. So again, you're seeing some of these same things. You're seeing players that teams had no intention of keeping, Carson Wentz, Matt Pryor, Zach Ertz, to move up picks or to gain additional picks. And then, of course, the final big one was the trade they made with the New Orleans Saints, where they sent the 16th overall pick and the 19th overall pick and a 6th round pick to get back the 18th pick, a 2023 first round pick, a 2024 second round pick, a 3rd round pick, and a 7th round pick. So essentially, they moved back 2 spots in the first round to swap first round picks, one for the future, one for now, and in return got a second, a third, and a minor trade back. Okay? If you look at the net gains and losses over these couple of years leading up to that, the New York Jets, they lost Jamal Adams and Sam Darnold, Avery Williamson, Chris Herndon, Steve McClendon, Jordan Phillips, and a couple of 7th round picks is what they ended up actually outright losing in these deals. The only player really worth anything at this point is Jamal Adams. In return, they got 175 overall pick improvement slots, an additional first, second, fourth, and sixth. They also accumulated Bradley McDougald, Joe Flacco, and Shaq Lawson. So say what you will about those, but overall, that is a net gain of significant value. The Baltimore Ravens traded away Orlando Brown Jr., Ben Bredesen, Greg Manch, Sean Wade, and a 7th round pick to have 113 overall pick improvement slots, a first, a third, fourth, fifth, and cornerback Josh Oliver. You tell me that's not a significant improvement in assets. How about the Eagles? They traded away Carson Wentz, Zach Ertz, Matt Pryor in a 7th in order to obtain 148 overall pick improvement slots, a first, a second, a third, and Tay Gowan. Right? So you can add a depth player here or there if you need to. The Jets, Baltimore Ravens, and Eagles all did that, but they were very careful about how they did it. They overall gained a significant number of picks. They overall gained a significant number of high picks, and they overall gained pick slot improvement. Every little one of those picks, that adds up. On draft day, the New York Jets this year, they ended up making a trade with the Tennessee Titans. They moved up from the 35th pick to the 26th pick, and in return, they sold a 5th and traded down from 69 to 101. They also traded up 2 spots from 38 to 36, and in return, they shipped out a 5th round pick to the New York Giants. The Baltimore Ravens draft day trades this year, they shipped out Marquise Brown to move up from 100 all the way to 23. So really, the way that this should be looked at is not that. Shouldn't be Tennessee. That's Cardinals. Let's show my face again there. The way this should be looked at is a trade of Marquise Brown to move up from the 100th pick all the way to the 23rd overall pick. And then they also made a trade with the Buffalo Bills to move down 2 spots, and in return they got the 130th overall pick, which is a 4th rounder. So essentially, if you want to look at it this way, what the Ravens actually gained and lost in trade value over this one weekend of the draft, they traded away Marquise Brown and moved down from the 3rd round to the 4th round to get the 25th overall pick. So they gained 1 1st round pick and moved down from the 3rd to the 4th and lost Marquise Brown. I'd call that a net win, personally. That's just my opinion. The Philadelphia Eagles made a number of different trades. The first one was with Houston. They gave up a 4th, a 5th, and another 5th to move up 2 spots in the 1st round. They also gave up a 1st and a 3rd to acquire A.J. Brown from the Tennessee Titans. Then at the very back of the draft, they traded down with the Jaguars from the 5th to the 6th to accumulate another 6th round pick. And they traded up with the Lions in the 6th round from 188 to 181. And to do so, they gave up a 7th round pick. So the Eagles were the most aggressive, probably ahead of the Jets and significantly ahead of the Ravens. So there's three different ideologies here. So there's three different ways of going about these trades that all kind of resulted in a strong draft. So after everything that you've seen here, this is really what the net gains were for these three teams outside of the picks that the selections themselves. The Jets, they lost 21 overall picks, like they pick slots. So minus 21 overall pick slots, a fifth and a fifth. The Ravens got an improvement of 79 overall picks. They gained a fourth, and they lost Marquise Brown. The Eagles, they lost a first, third, fourth, fifth, and fifth, and in return they had 14 overall pick improvements and A.J. Brown. So, like I said, most aggressive Eagles, second most aggressive Jets, and like in a distant third, I guess you would probably say rather unaggressive, were the Ravens. That means that the New York Jets, while they lost two fifth round picks and had a 21 overall pick slot reduction, they were able to come away with 4 clear first round talents, players that most of the draft community had rated anywhere from maybe third at the position or even first at the position. So Sauce Gardner, a lot of people had him rated first at the corner position. Garrett Wilson, a lot of people had him rated first at the wide receiver position. Jermaine Johnson, you saw a little bit of a range with him, but a lot of draft analysts had him somewhere around third at the position, third to fourth. Fourth was about as low as he went for most people. Breece Hall, nearly the consensus number 1 running back. And then Jeremy Ruckert, like once you get out of those top picks, Jeremy Ruckert is a tight end who I personally think can have a major impact in year 2, 3. I think he was a player who showed clear flashes in the passing game and was primarily used as a run blocker, and because that Ohio State offense really revolved around those wide receivers and the talent they had at that position, and the offense was predicated on them. So like the scheme was predicated on them, and then just the fact that they were so effective there was really not much reason to turn to the tight end as a weapon. So for me to come away with 4 players who are impact players, and most of whom are high priority positions, like to give up 21 overall pick slots and 2 fifths in this draft, I find that extremely viable. And normally these teams, they don't just give up 5th round picks. Any of these teams, for the most part, they don't just throw them away like they throw away 7th or even 6th round picks. But I will say this: if you followed this draft, a lot of the analysts, especially the ones I respect the most, like Daniel Jeremiah or Dane Brugler, they told you that like this draft, basically around pick 100 and like between there and 150, this draft just like dried up in terms of the quality talent. And normally teams have a 150 player board that they operate off of, something around that. And so if teams were looking at this and were like, okay, like if normally we don't value 7th round picks because they just don't have that much of an impact, like there's not that much difference between that and a UDFA normally, in a draft like this, 5th round, 6th round picks, they're the same. So teams, you can see, were more than willing to give up some of those picks. The Baltimore Ravens, so they get this draft haul along with a 79 overall pick slot improvement and a 4th round pick. And they do lose Marquise Brown, but they gain Kyle Hamilton, the consensus number 1 safety, Tyler Linderbaum, the consensus number 1 center, David Ojabo, who was rated usually 4th or 5th in terms of edge rushers in a loaded edge class. Travis Jones, who was my defensive tackle 3, a lot of people's defensive tackle 3 or 4, and a top 40 player on a lot of people's boards. And then they have an interesting little thing that they've done in the 4th round, which they do a lot. Okay, so once they have kind of gotten outside of their top 40 board, top 50 board, I don't know exactly what it is, like only they could tell you. What they start to do a lot is double pick, and if they're less sure that a player will pan out, they will take 2 players at that same position in hopes that one will. So they'll improve their hit rate that way. You know, it's how they've hit on tackles in the past. It's how they hit on Mark Andrews. They took a tight end in the 1st round, turned around and took another one in the 3rd. And guess what? Mark Andrews is one of the best tight ends in the league. And the 1st round pick, Hayden Hurst, they shipped him off because they were willing to take 2 and keep the best one. So they took 2 corners in the 4th and 2 tight ends in the 4th. They took a developmental right tackle and a punter in the 4th. And then a running back in the 6th, Tyler Beatty. I'm not even sure how he fell that far. But this team, they essentially ignored traditional view of positional value, just took the consensus best player at the position and said, we are extremely confident that these players will pan out, and then we will just take whoever other teams are not valuing. And so they end up with 4 top 40 type players because of David Ojabo got hurt and because Travis Jones had potential weight concerns. But again, at University of Connecticut, if any team out there, I trust the Baltimore Ravens as an organization to help keep a player's weight in check over a program like Connecticut. I'm not trying to throw shade, it's just the truth. The Philadelphia Eagles, their overall pick improvement improved 14. They gave up a lot of picks, but they were able to come away with A.J. Brown, who would, knowing what you know now, would probably go number 1 overall in this draft class. Okay? Like I don't know how to phrase it. Obviously the Jaguars are not going to trade the 1st overall pick for A.J. Brown, just because their teams are always eager to see what they get in the unknown. But with a pick in the teens and a 3rd round pick, they get A.J. Brown. They move assets to the future. They collect Jordan Davis, who many people had as the best defensive tackle in the draft. They got Cam Jurgens, the 2nd best center in the draft, and Nakobe Dean, who many people had as the 1st or 2nd best linebacker in the entire draft because he was hurt. And then they took a couple of swings on guys in the 6th round. So when you're looking at a draft, the chance of getting impact players is key. Now, you could point to giving up a substantial number of picks and being ultra confident in what you're going to get back. But considering one of them is a proven veteran player, it's a little bit of a different situation. And you look at that Eagles team, and they are well loaded. They have a lot of players. They were a playoff team last year, and I think they were honestly missing a few pieces. And the biggest question, especially after bringing A.J. Brown on board, is quarterback. So, I think by situating themselves comfortably next year with extra draft assets, especially high assets, that quarterback answer is something that they might have to address next year. But I think they gave their guy every opportunity to show he's the guy this year, and if not, they set themselves up to be successful in the future. So, the Ravens, they pivoted away from a deep passing offense, or what they were kind of toying with, and essentially they said, we're going to get back to running the ball. You got all these teams trying to defend players like Josh Allen, like Patrick Mahomes, like Justin Herbert, like Deshaun Watson, with these deep cover 2, cover 4 shells, getting these 2 safeties deep, leaving these boxes empty, and we're getting back to running the football heavily. Okay, they drafted multiple tight ends. They drafted a big-ass right tackle. They drafted an excellent center. And so they're going to be running a boatload of 12 personnel. I promise you that. And they're just getting back to the ground game, I think. They're making a real effort for that. Then the Eagles here. They drafted the center of the future. They drafted the defensive tackle of the future. They drafted the leader on the defense of the future, Nakobe Dean. Like, I think they're competitive this year, but they set themselves up for a major push with the roster that they have. Like, these were the final touches, aside from possibly quarterback, on the new version of the Philadelphia Eagles after that 2017 win. Like, they've really kind of turned things around from that version of the roster to a new one. And they'll probably be a run-heavy offense as well. And the Jets, they spent the last couple of years accumulating a ton of middle-tier veterans, like decent veterans, and a lot of good-ish players. And instead of saying, okay, we've got Elijah Moore and Corey Davis, so now what we really need to do is add depth. Or we've got Michael Carter at running back, we need to add depth. Or, we've got these guys who played pretty well at corner, but we've got to add depth. No, they said, we're going to make all those guys who played okay, pretty good, and make them the depth. And this draft was about adding star potential players to impact positions. And they're going to be a clear running team as well. They've made investments at guard. They've made investments at tight end. They've made investments at running back. And they're going to give their young quarterback the opportunity to have a functional offense that doesn't totally depend on him and let him grow and prove that he's the guy as well. So it's just like, aside from just picking good players, getting a number of top 40 level players, for each of these teams, there's a clear vision about what they're trying to accomplish. There's good self-scouting. There's pivoting. There's recognition of their own roster life cycle. There's significant amount of time and focus put in on accumulating draft picks by getting rid of high-profile players at the right moment, getting rid of players that they never intended to keep anyway for lesser picks and or minor trade-ups that kind of build up over time as a significant improvement in asset value. And then knowing exactly what you want, knowing who you are, and striking. And so I just love what all 3 of these teams did. Now, the last thing I'll do, because I got to run, is just take a quick look at what these teams did in accordance with my target ranges for these positions to maximize your overall draft value. Let's make my face go away for a sec. Okay. And this is really focused on the first 3 rounds, because beyond that, you can draft pretty much any position you want for the most part in the 4th or beyond. And I don't think it makes any difference for value, really. That's about getting depth pieces for the most part. Or taking a few swings on a potential, athletic freak or something like that who hasn't been developed at all. But the Jets did the best on this. They hit a wide receiver in the top 10. They hit an edge rusher in the remainder of the first round, and they hit a tight end at pick 101, which I'm fine with calling 100. And their running back, they took it 36, but also, like, generally speaking, my running back slot is 40 to 64 is a good place to look for that. So I'm not gonna be upset about them going 4 picks over my projected value, right? Like, I'm not gonna be fanatical about that. And they took a corner at 4. And while I have corner as being targeted in the first round, you know, if your board says that this is a truly elite type of player, again, like I'm not going to be fanatical about going for a corner in the top 10, especially if you get 3 to 4 like hits in that target range. Like I'm really comfortable with the way that the Jets struck that. The Ravens did the worst on this. They kind of took my value chart and threw it out the window. But they have their own value chart, like, and their own ideology. They say we're going to take the best players, and we're going to take the best players that we know are really confident are going to be good, and then we're going to take 6 picks in the 4th round and try and hit on a couple of them. And that's one way to do it too. They've been very successful with it. And the Eagles did pretty well too. They got a defensive lineman in the 1st round and a linebacker in the 3rd. And you can wait for guys who are hurt and can develop if they're that level of player. So I just think that they did a really nice job there as well. But I think the Jets probably had the best overall draft just based on the number of players that they accumulated who are high quality players, the way that they hit the target ranges by position, and the overall number of assets that they gave up to get those players. I think that they did the best job out of all of them. But I loved all 3 of these drafts. I love all 3 of the weekends. I love all 3 of the trajectories of these teams. So again, I got to run. So hit me up on Twitter at TheMaxDean and subscribe, throw a comment down below. If you like, hate, dispute, want more, just let me know. All right. Thanks, guys.